I believe we have a quorum now. All right, Matt, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. I'll go ahead and begin.
Okay, we're we're going to go ahead and start law and licensing. Chair Hymas is ready to start for us. Is that slow enough and drawn out enough?
You got it.
Okay.
Okay. The committee this is agenda item 2.2, R277-751, Special Education Extended School Year, ESY Amendment and Continuation. The committee moves that the board continue and approve R277-751, Special Education Extended School Year, ESY Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Board Member Laird, do you have a comment?
I do not.
Okay. All right, so the motion is that the board continues and approves R277-751 Special Education Extended Year ESY Draft 1 on second and final reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That was unanimous. Okay, go ahead.
Item number 2.3, this is the Utah Adult Education Policies and Procedures Guide incorporated by reference into R277-733. I'm going to put a motion on the floor, but we do have some conversation behind this. The committee moves that the board approve Utah Adult Education Policies and Procedures Guide incorporated by reference into R277-733. And I'll speak to that if I can.
Okay.
After committee meeting, we had some constituents reach out to other board members who have since reached out to me and other members of the committee. I'd like to turn some time over to Chair Norton and have her kind of express this better than I can. And then I'm sure we'll need staff to help answer some questions that I could not for Chair Norton. So Deputy Stallings, do you remember who? Oh, they're on their way. Okay.
Chair Norton, did you have a comment you wanted to add?
I do have some comments I wanted to add about this. As we heard in public comment, as well as other directors of our adult education programs, there is some concern about some of these changes. And as we have, as we look at this, this is a different group of students than our traditional K-12 students. These are students who are raising their children and trying to make ends meet. And so an increase of 10 or 15 hours could be extra months for them. It's not about, it's not about the social get together with your high school buddies in school. Also, this board and this state has made a pretty clear decision that we value the student's ability to learn and to acquire competencies or educational foundation skills over seat time. And yet, this flies in the face of that. And then the third thing is, for many of these adult education groups, these divisions in our state, they're using a national-based testing service, a standardized test, and in there, they say at 40 hours that a minimum of 40 hours would be required. It's not for every student, but there are some students who are highly motivated, or there are some students who are very intelligent that could get through that in 40 hours. And these students are the students that were disenfranchised in traditional schools, sometimes for these very same reasons. And to keep them from attaining this goal and to keep the divisions from obtaining the data that shows, yes, they did make that level gain based on a time period seems to be arbitrary. So with that, I had proposed a new amendment that, that the board send this back to the committee and to direct staff to work together. There we go. Is that it? I didn't, anyway, that the committee directs staff to collaborate with these education directors from the adult education programs in our state.
I do have a question. I'm not sure who this is directed to, but we have this on 2 items. It
So
would both
one-
be going back?
One is, they would need to, the rule itself is updating the link
Okay.
to this
So both
manual
would
or-
need to go to return?
I believe so, because this would, if this needs work, then there's nothing to update on the rule.
Okay. Okay. So it's the motion for both to go back, and then do we, I don't know if we've got someone here to speak.
Yes.
Just make sure you give your name and title.
Stephanie Patton, Adult Education Coordinator. And if I can address some of the concerns that Board Member Norton has, that would be awesome. First of all, let's be clear about what this is and what this is not. This is not about keeping students from graduating and moving forward. It's a standardized test that's required by the Federal Office of Career Technical and Adult Education as a part of monitoring program effectiveness. And the recommendations from the National Reporting System for post-testing is a minimum of 40. It's not a recommendation. The recommendation is above 70 to 100 hours, depending on the test, over 40 hours. The minimum allowed is 40 hours. So we looked at data before we made this change. In the past many years, it was set at actually 60 hours to post-test. We looked at data, we looked at the recommendations from the National Reporting System, and when we looked at data, the average amount of tests or hours per student before they were seeing a level gain is over 100 hours, between 100 and 200 hours, depending on the last 2 years, right? One was 185, one was 218 hours. The reason why we're doing this is a student-centric purpose, right? Because when we're testing just to test, when students haven't received a normal amount of, and a sufficient number of hours to see a level gain, then we're incurring cost to the student of time and stress that are kind of meaningless, right? If you consider in a traditional school setting, how many hours are typically between standardized tests? Many, many more than 40 hours or 50 hours, right? You wouldn't consider doing a RISE test 40 hours for a K-12 student, right? Or an ACT, right? Like there's a lot more instruction in between. And when we're talking about level gains for adult education, we're not talking about 1 year of growth, we're talking about 2 years of growth, right? A level gain is 2 years of growth. So, and the other reason why we're looking at this as well is because students typically, when we look at how long students stay in adult education, we have a retention problem, and we're trying to raise programs like changing from a 40 to 50 hours of post-testing is not about harming the student, right? It's not keeping them back from progressing and moving forward and getting a diploma or a GED. What it is doing is impacting program structure and encouraging programs to make sure that they're giving additional services to the student in an adequate way and looking at the whole student and making sure that the student is receiving the instruction that they need to move forward. More in line with the portrait of a graduate, right? Because otherwise what happens is that programs find ways to move that student through as quickly as possible. And what we see happening is programs preparing a student to meet the very minimum of a GED test that doesn't address things like writing, because you can pass the GED without ever doing writing, right? And being able to write. And how do you move forward in the future if you can't write, right? We want to open those doors for the students. So we're encouraging programs to create a structure where students are staying 10 hours longer, not requiring them to, right? But creating a structure where they're looking at all of the needs of a student. I was talking to a student not too long ago who had gone through adult education and had not received the digital literacy skills that she really needed and was struggling in Salt Lake Community College because of it, right? So we want to make sure that we're seeing the whole student and preparing the student adequately to meet the next step.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that information. Chair
Yes.
Hymas?
So there's a motion on the floor. I don't know if it's been seconded or if I should wait to speak.
What? I'm trying to remember. Did someone second it? I'm not remembering.
I had a motion.
You had the motion. Did someone second it?
Back to committee.
Yes. Do we have a second to that? Okay, we have a second to that. Do you want to speak to that?
Can I just speak to some of the concerns that you've had, Chair Norton, and we can go from there. But from what I'm seeing from the, what's the actual title of this thing? Manual, something, anyway.
Utah Adult Education.
Well, is
Nope,
it a
that's
guide?
not it. Policies and Procedures Guidance.
Okay,
incorporating
so
reference.
guide. So if I'm looking on page 8, for example, it says, programs should provide quality instruction and continuity of services across the state, ensuring students are afforded an educational experience that is comparable in intensity and rigor to a traditional K-12 high school program. So I don't think this is designed to say, hey, you've made some poor choices, or whatever has fallen on you, let's quickly get you through your adult education or high school diploma, whatever, right? So it's not designed to do that. Additionally, and I'm going to ask for help if I'm wrong here, there was a concern that students are not allowed to take tests when they've completed their course of learning, but I believe on page 24B, I'm jumping all over the place, and I apologize. On page 24, it says, when the student feels that they have mastered the material, mastery is demonstrated through an instructional unit test. So again, I think it's saying, hey, if they feel ready to take the test, they can take the test. Is that right? And then finally, the testing requirements on page 23, at the very bottom of page 23, it says a panel of experts sets a formula to translate instruction into contact hours. Is this contact hours, is this the 40 to 50? Because it says, like, for example, if the student earns 70% accuracy on questions per unit of instruction, the panel would equate the score to a certain number of contact hours. So I don't necessarily know if it means 40 hours means 40 hours exactly. Am I reading that, interpreting
Yeah.
that correctly?
If I can address that really quickly.
Yeah, that would be fine. Go ahead.
Again, Stephanie Patton, Adult Education Coordinator, yes. So what happens is that a student could turn in a packet, and the program has identified that this packet is worth 20 hours, right? And so actually in instructional, like traditional models, right, like a face-to-face sitting in front of a teacher, they may have actually 0 of those, but they've completed a packet and 2 packets maybe, or whatever, and received 40 hours and are post-tested at that point.
So I don't know. I'm just trying to speak to some of the concerns that were brought up today and that we've kind of talked about. I don't know if that helps, but that's the research that I've.
Okay, if I'm understanding, you're saying that you're seeing that most of these have been addressed in some way already. So do you want to just follow up real quick and then we'll take a vote?
I do. First of all, to the high school rigor, these are students, the students that are in this select group that would be taking this at 40 hours are students who are coming into the program highly intelligent, or they've already, they're far enough along that they only have just a little bit of learning left to do. Secondly, they not being able to take the test kind of robs them of the opportunity that they have of, they've just done this work, and now you say, oh, I can't test and find out how I did, which is a confidence builder. We've, those of us that are educators see that when you have a student that's mastered skills, they like to see the paper that said you got the A. And that's another part of it. And the mastery that they've achieved, they feel like is theirs to earn. These adult education centers don't issue the GEDs. They don't issue the high school diplomas, the credit. These students go somewhere else to get that. They go to,
We're getting a disagreement from staff.
they
So-
go to universities or they go to outside testing stores. But these adult education groups, this is how they are judged, is how well their students are doing. So no, they don't want to just be sending students out there that aren't prepared. It looks bad for them. Their programs thrive because students are being successful through these programs to move on. And right now, they have a floor, and there are many students that do need more. They dropped out of school when they were in 8th grade or whatever. But those students that, come in high, or those students that are in custody, that are going to be transferred out, if, they want to accomplish this goal that they have. And, for us to withhold that from them, I think, is sending the wrong message.
Okay, Stephanie, do you want to quickly just address, there seemed to be a discrepancy there.
Yeah, so remember, this is not about withholding any kind of diploma or credential from them. And when we're testing, when they're not ready, nothing's going to show, right? If there's no instruction given, there's nothing to show. You have to have sufficient instruction. And adult education programs are issuing credentials. It's true that the testing is done through a GED and it has to be a Pearson VUE approved center, but adult education programs are actually awarding high school diplomas to students.
Okay, thank you. Lear, yep, you are there.
Thank you. How you explained the hourly sort of situation helps me a lot, because you seem to be saying 40 hours isn't really 40 hours. It's an amount or a decision that's made by some adult ed instructor. So that does make me more comfortable about the hourly requirement, because there's some subjectivity in it. However, and I talked to Kristen about this before this meeting at length, and she's hearing this from people in the field. So the concern about the number of hours. So I'm wondering if there's a communication problem or a disconnect with the folks who are actually working in these programs, and they are more viewing these as real hours. Would you think that could be true? Or are you sure they understand this the way that you're explaining it?
So I'm just going to hurry us along here, but if you can give just a quick answer, we have one more response, and then we've probably got to take a vote on this because we need to move on. But go ahead with a quick answer.
Yeah, if I can address that. I think a lot of the concern comes from a previous funding formula that was really based heavily on level gains, right? So when your money is impacted seriously, right, like large drops,
Dramatically.
right, dramatic drops by level gains, you're going to be super invested in this, right? We've already taken steps to stabilize that so that programs can really focus on what is most important for students, right? I can't speak necessarily to whether they understand all of the complexity. I mean, they should understand the complexities of the hours.
Okay.
But I think the concern lies in the old funding formula, and they haven't adjusted to the new funding formula.
And I know you want to move on, but just
Yes.
because this seems really important.
Just make it quick. Go ahead.
I will. So motion is just send it back to the committee so that we can understand it better and maybe talk with the folks in the field better to understand if there's some communication problem. So to me, sending it back to the committee to discuss it is way better than just, we want to change it to a different arbitrary number of hours, so that there's a more common understanding. So I would support sending it back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Hart?
So at any point, a person that lives in Utah can go online and take the GED test and get their GED, correct? They don't have to do anything through anyone.
Unless they're 16 to 18, then they do have to interact with adult education enough to clear the
Except for-
alerts, but that's all. Like, not
Right,
take-
16
yeah.
to 18, there is some requirement for these hours.
Not
Or-
hours, just to get approval and
Sure.
there's a hoop to
You
jump
have to
through.
be shepherded through the system by somebody taking responsibility for getting you through the system. But other than that, after 18, you sign up and you take the test. So, and the hours, or the
Score, credit.
the requirements were given by not Utah. Utah did not set those hours. We are simply repeating the requirements from the test creator, the person owning the test instrument.
Test publishers and the national reporting
So-
system.
Right, so by not honoring the requirements of that instrument, we would be going against and really not using the instrument appropriately. And so it's not something we create it out of thin air. It comes out of the instrument manual, like any other instrument that we would use that has a national designation, correct?
Correct.
So those, okay, so.
And none of the recommendations for testing were at 40 hours. It's a minimum with exceptions, but the recommendations are all higher than
The
50.
recommendations are higher, and the minimum, according to the person in, the people that administer the instrument or have ownership over the instrument, the minimum is, you said,
70 to 100 hours.
and we are putting the floor at what?
40.
40, okay, thank you.
All right.
We're voting on 50, right?
Well, yes, 50, sorry. We're voting to move it to 50, but yes.
The floor is 40 in the CASA, which is
We can't-
testing instrument.
Chair? Okay. All right, we're going to take a vote. No, it's, we can't hear you for one thing, so you didn't have your thing up. But, okay, the motion is that the board refer R277733 and the Utah Adult Education Policies and Procedure Guide incorporated into the rule by reference back to the committee for further discussion and action, and direct staff to coordinate with adult education directors on identified concerns on potential amendments. All those in favor? Sending it back to committee. Back to committee. Raise your hand if it back to.
We've got Booth, Lear, Wood,
In
Norton,
favor to send it back to
Imus,
committee.
Reel, Davis, and Moss.
Okay,
So that passes.
does it, what was the numbers?
8 voting in favor.
Okay, so it will be going back to committee. Okay, we can move on to the next one.
Okay, so we are going to skip agenda item 2.4, as that was tied together. And then we are going to jump to item 2.5. The committee moves that the board repeal R277-532, local board policies for evaluation of non-licensed public education employees, classified employees, on second and final reading.
So the motion is that the board repeal R277532, local board policies for evaluation of non-licensed public education employees, classified employees, on second and final reading. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Go ahead.
Agenda item 2.6, R277-329, local board policies for evaluation of classified employees. This is a readopt. The committee moves that the board approve R277-329, local board policies for evaluation of classified employees, draft 2 on second and final reading.
Board Member Klein, did you have a question?
Yes, I just noticed, the only thing I could tell that was different with this one was that they removed the reference to 53G 11-515, which that code says that employees have a right to a hearing and to appeal a school board's decision to terminate classified employees. So is that, I don't know if that's.
Are you, what question, do you want to, you're wondering if that is removed completely?
It is, well, it's removed, so if a classified employee is dismissed, can they appeal that? Or do they have a hearing, and is that a problem that they don't?
Okay, is there someone that may be able to answer that question?
I would say Angie or Ben. If I remember correctly, after
Okay.
looking at the rule, there wasn't anything that was concerning or illegal or.
Do you want that question asked again, Ben? Will you give your name and,
Yeah, Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. I was just trying to remember that because I don't remember,
do you have a line, Board Member Klein?
just trying to remember.
I thought we changed
Well,
it.
Dr.
it was
Height, do you
taken,
have-
there are other references, but 53G 11-515 was removed between the original and the one we're adopting.
Do you
So
have a line by chance?
I don't have it.
Oh,
in
that's
front of
okay.
me, Sorry.
Let me,
Dr. Height, do you know on this one? No, okay.
I'm just
if you
pulling
do.
up the statute.
Is that common practice that classified employees don't have a hearing if they're dismissed or have the opportunity to appeal the decision of the school board?
Yes,
Hi, Dr. Malia Hyatt, Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing. And all of the employment policies for classified staff fall under LEA, local control. And so whatever is the local LEA's determination is their determination.
Well,
Okay.
I think she's referring you to, it was in 532, which we repealed, and we didn't put it here.
It's not in, I think that.
I think it may have been just because the statute is still in effect, and the rule doesn't really go to those things. And that the local boards can still adopt their policies consistent with that, but we don't have to cite the statute in the rule to carry it out.
Board Member Klein, did you have an additional question?
No, I just wanted to make sure that that was put out there in case somebody had a concern.
Sorry, I forgot what we did there. So what happened is if you look on line 23, it cites section 512 through 517. So when we had the separate reference to 515, it was duplicative of that subsection. So we took it out because it's still in there. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
You're saying it's put somewhere else?
We
Okay.
had two subparagraphs, one which refers to six statutes, and one that referred to that section 515. And because it's already included in the other subsection, it was duplicative.
Okay, does that answer your question? All right, so the motion for the board is that, all right, make sure I'm on the right one. That the board approves R277-329, local board policies for evaluation of classified employees, draft 2 on second and final reading. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Okay, go ahead.
Agenda item 2.7, R277-104, ADA complaint procedure. This is an amendment and continuation. The committee moves that the board continue and approve R277-104, ADA complaint procedure, draft 2 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board continues and approves R277-104, ADA compliant procedures, draft 2 on second and final reading. All those,
Sorry,
Board Member Bogus?
I'm just wondering how we define remedy. Excuse me.
Well, that I do not know. Are you talking holistic remedy, or what are we?
Well, there's, as I read it, there's one amendment in here that I can see.
Do you have a line that you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am, I'm so sorry, I should have been more clear. Line 43, there's one minor change in here, and it says that a description of they struck out action, and they put remedy. But I'm wondering how that's defined. Maybe it's just me not understanding, but I wonder if others might not understand as well.
Okay,
If if I may.
Go ahead.
So we received a board member request to make that change in languages, was my recollection. Was it you, Board Member
Yeah.
Hymas? Remedy is a legal term that's pretty well understood within, I think, legal circles. It basically means what you're asking for to fix the situation. So we didn't include a definition here. I think it is pretty commonly understood in the legal field.
Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, all right, let me, read it again, that the board continues and approves R277104 ADA compliant procedures, draft 2 on second and final reading. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Okay, go ahead, last one.
Last item, this is item 14.8, I've been saying 2.8, but 14.8, R277-107, educational services outside of an educator's regular employment. This is a continuation. The committee moves that the board continue R277-107, educational services outside of an educator's regular employment on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion is that the board continues R277107, educational services outside of an educator's regular employment on second and final reading. All those in favor, raise your hand. That was not was that unanimous? Okay. I think it was unanimous. We got a hand at the end there.